Thank you, Evie. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I am so honored to be here speaking with Mel and Adam. This is my 5th time speaking at BrightEdge, and it's always a pleasure to be back. There's 2 pillars in this room, so I may walk around just a little bit so that those who can't see us can. So I'm going to be speaking from a personal standpoint today about some concepts that I've been thinking about. When they asked me to speak back in April, I made some notes and had a draft for this talk 6 months ago, actually. So I've been thinking about this and trying to internalize it for a while. So I'm going to be talking about a compass and a map today. And we are all here as the 3 of us. I think combined we have over 50 years of digital marketing experience. So we are not here for us, for the kudos. We really want this to be a practical session for all of you. And so, you know, when you think about a compass and you think about travel, I think of Mount Everest. That comes to mind as a big place to go. And Mount Everest, they have Sherpas, if those of you who know a little bit about mountaineering, who will help these people get to the top of the mountain. And so let us be your Sherpas today. You guys will need to do the work and to have the takeaways, but let us help you get there. So my key message is really about self-directed career growth. Incorporating these 4 areas, I call them the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, and I attributed some concepts to them around vision, around data, around creativity, and around talent development. And my point of view on being able to speak on these is this is my 3rd career that I'm in. I used to be in sales early on, and then I was in talent acquisition for 8 years, and I've been doing digital marketing and working now with customers for the last while. So I really want to convey to you some practical takeaways that you can get out of this. So let's talk about vision. So vision to me is, and I've included in each of these frameworks challenges, lessons, and some frameworks that you can take away, as well as anything applicable out of BrightEdge that you might be able to use. Hopefully you'll be able to include your own take on some of those areas in this. But vision to me is around both personal and corporate, having a personal ambition, a way of operating that really aligns you to what drives you ultimately, and how that maps up to your corporate priorities and corporate values. So the framework I use for this is around company, team, and personal, and having some overlap. This doesn't need to be elaborate or well thought out. It could be as simple as making sure you and your manager are aligned on the values that matter to them, and that you take time to get to know a or some VIPs in your organization to also ensure that you are operating within the idea of what is most important for the VIPs. But it's really about making sure that you have alignment as well as determining your own personal vision. So some of the challenges here, people have different levels of ambition. There's this continuum of where some people want to get to the top and climb that Mount Everest, and some are okay to incrementally grow in their career. And so some of the challenges that people can have are around developing something that's a compelling vision or a motivator for you, learning how to manage up, which I think is a skill that we all can continue to improve upon, and how to get recognized or noticed by VIPs in your organization. So for me, this really represents lessons that I've learned. One has been around taking risks. I've taken on a number of stretch projects. My former manager actually happens to be here in the room, and he was great at supporting me to take on some stretch projects in the organization. And to be more bold with how I went about, tackling projects. And so it really is about making an impact. So I'll just because I want this to be a little bit audience involved. How many have taken on a stretch project in the last year that required you to learn a new skill and got you out of your comfort zone? Great. How about in the last month? Who's learned a brand new skill that they never knew before, just in the last month? Cool. Maybe even the last couple of days here at the conference. That's awesome. So that's around the north direction of having vision and getting clear around aligning towards your organization. Data, I think of this as the left brain side, and how we can demonstrate more business value through being data driven, and how we can develop a better understanding of the digital marketing alignments that we can have in the organization. So, pretty simple concept here around a marketing funnel framework. I think there's different terms we use for this, but this should be pretty familiar to all of us. And we talk about data as marketers, as SEOs, quite frequently. But the idea that not only do you have data that you need that you can integrate with, but the fact that out of BrightEdge and out of your analytics platforms, there's a tremendous amount of awareness that you have as marketers that you can share with people from the paid search team, from the social team, from content marketers. And the ability to bridge those gaps and take the data that you have that may exist in a silo and share it with other organizations. It's a simple step, but to do it consistently and repeatedly can drive a lot of value in the organization. It's also about how you can access the right data and think about it from the entire customer lifecycle. Those of you who are in organizations that are sophisticated in thinking about multi-channel marketing know how important it is to have an understanding of the customer that includes all the different marketing channels they might come through. So one of the challenges that we all face in today's world is around how we think about data in a multi-channel marketing environment effectively. So I think, who has not used the data cube here in this room? Hopefully no hands. Good. Great. So everybody's used the data cube, so you know about this. You've heard some great things in the keynotes, especially yesterday, about some new features that BrightEdge is coming out with. But the data cube can be so fantastic for sharing that data, not only with your executives and your immediate stakeholders, but inviting your peers in other marketing channels to take a look at the rich set of data that you have there. That can be a very easy thing for you to do to convey value. Recommendations engine is another great way that, especially with the emphasis here on content opportunities and social optimization, those are things that apply to other stakeholders, those from content marketing and web production. So if you're not using the recommendations, it's an easy way to tackle some low-hanging fruit that might be beneficial to your peers. So some lessons learned, asking VIPs for feedback. There's a little bit of a fear factor at times around asking for feedback. But the ability to ensure that you're taking the data you have and that it really maps to the organization's objectives, I think is an important first step. Also, we take for granted that the data is telling us something. And sometimes it might be telling us something that requires us to really tell a story that maybe is negative or a downward trend. And the ability to be not only open about that, but then develop some action items that we can help course correct, I think is also a mark of both credibility, but it also gives you that integration with what those execs or VIPs would want to know. Driving measurable impact across content, search, social, and digital. The power of the search marketing data, SEO and paid, and even site search for those of you who have that capacity is so powerful in how it can really impact the digital marketing channel. So these are some lessons I've learned, especially the one about making sure that you get on the radar for those execs in your organization and that they know the value of the data that you have access to. All right, so let's talk about creativity. This is a stretch for a lot of us. I don't mean here creativity around graphic design or using Adobe Photoshop. I mean really thinking creatively. So this is about how to think more about our daily work and bring creativity into how we produce reports, how we communicate, how we tell better stories with the data that we have access to. The challenge, I think, for a lot of us is we're in this field because we may not think of ourselves as creative, and yet when we're trying to get buy-in with executives, they have a viewpoint that is obviously higher than ours and much more about how to tell the story and really align to the strategy. So when we're thinking about how to get buy-in, that's where I would encourage you all to think about creative storytelling and using things in a way that reinforces the value of SEO and search marketing. So as some examples, some frameworks you can use, I don't think we often associate the heart with digital marketing, but the ability to appeal to what your executives care about in terms of something that has a resonance, whether it's an anecdote from something you've seen, whether it's an edge case of what you're seeing out in the search results, or maybe it's simply how to appeal more to the customer's lifetime value. As an example, let's say that you are able to capture the support intent of some of your customers in search results, and you're able to appeal to the kinds of queries that you may not have yet surfaced. That would be an example, potentially, of appealing a little bit more to a care about that your executives would want to understand, and definitely your customers are expressing. Having credible evidence and being believable, I mean, that's a given, but I think it's always about, making sure we're not only authentic with the data, but we can back it up and represent it. And then how does this affect me? So here I'm thinking about, why should what you're sharing matter to that executive or to that other stakeholder? And what do they need to do about it? Because anytime we can back up our storytelling with good use cases, but also here's what we can do next, I think it really helps keep things moving forward. Another framework that I've been thinking about in the last few months since I started putting this together, and I know it's hard to see, but you can look up this gentleman named Dan Roam, R-O-A-M, and he has a great visual storytelling framework. And he talks about it in terms of different parts of the brain, literally, and who, what, how much, where, when, how, and why. He references this here. And then he's actually taken those into different types of visual maps. And he, on his blog post about this, he says, I can take these 6 concepts, portrait, chart, map, timeline, flowchart, and multivariable plot, and I would include compass. And he said, I can tell a storyline to an executive in a way that I can insert my data, I can insert my point of view, and I can convey things in a way that aligns with vision. And it really kind of, the way he puts it is he hijacks people's brains, because we're all so visual, and the internet clearly is becoming more visual, and he's able to do this in a way that doesn't get him down in the weeds, keeps things really up here, but allows him to tell a story. So this is something that might be a stretch for some of you to consider, of how, charts are easy. We do charts all day long. Flowcharts, probably a lot of us do, and timelines we definitely do, but think about a portrait or a map and how you would communicate that, especially with some of your executive presentations, might be something that you can put into play. Out of BrightEdge, these are just some examples of things you may have used: share of voice reports, content performance, and anomaly detection. You may have some of your own favorites that allow you to tell a better story, but these are some examples that the Adobe team has used along the way to tell their own data story. So definitely being a visual storyteller and being creative does require more work. But when you're able to combine that left brain, right brain, data plus creativity, use that in your reporting and in your storytelling, and develop a template that works and you can repeat, it can be extremely effective in really making sure that you get your point across. And anything you read, I really like to read CMO.com, which happens to be an Adobe publication, but they talk a lot about the master skill of marketers is becoming storytelling. And so this might be an easy way for you to kind of enter into that new skill set and learn how to tell some good stories. All right, talent development. This is one that I really like because it's just something that I've really tried to develop for myself, and definitely I'm not perfect at it. I'm always working at how to grow my skills, and I've done enough things over the years to realize that I'm always learning and often feel like a novice. But being grounded by your personal brand, which Mel's going to talk a lot about, and skills development is more on the personal side. And then some of you may have formal corporate check-ins or ways of getting performance reviews, so that would be a way in a corporate setting of doing that. So this is one framework in terms of personal brand. One practical thing you might consider for your own brand is, what are the words that represent you, and who do you want to know that? Because the way we see ourselves and the way others sees us is really what represents our brand. But I found that I had to go first oftentimes in establishing my brand. It can be as simple as on a call with some new stakeholders, just taking a couple minutes to say, hey, I'm about whatever it is that you were out. Like for me, I was big about establishing relationships and keeping things moving and building good frameworks that we could base momentum on and aligning to strategy. So I would often, say those things, not in a kind of look at me way, but just to say this is what I'm about, and this is what our team's about, and this is what we want to try to deliver value to you from. So thinking about what words represent you, and then asking, you don't have to take a big risk on this, but asking others for, hey, does this sound like me? Do I show up this way consistently? And then, you might even tie it to, if you know your organization's values, if they're in writing, how do you map up to those from a brand standpoint? But I know Mel's going to go into a lot more detail about this one. So challenges here, one is around self-awareness, emotional intelligence, EQ. Some of you may have studied on that a little bit. And I find that to be a pretty fascinating field because they're really talking about how emotional intelligence is sort of the next leverage point to get you forward in your career in terms of how you connect with people and how you really demonstrate your ability to build rapport and drive value. Where your talents, interests, and passions meet opportunity. I think that's another challenge that we often are not familiar with. And then what skills we're best at. So it might benefit some of you even to hire a coach. I've done that before. I've hired an outside coach who I talked to on a weekly basis. I paid them some money and I said, I didn't want to talk to anybody at work. I just said, hey, can you help me work through some of these things and help me understand how I'm showing up in a way that aligns me better with my own skills and how I can get better recognition. From a practical standpoint, you may have seen last year the hottest skills on LinkedIn, statistical analysis, data mining, not a big surprise, marketing, campaign management, SEO and SEM are number 4, mobile development, web architecture. There's no lack of things to learn in our industry. That's what's so exciting about it. But data analytics, marketing automation, campaign management, if you want to venture and take a risk and do a stretch into a new area, go ask somebody in your organization that you want to stretch and take on one of these areas, and you'll get the ride of your life because you will make mistakes and you will have to be a novice again, but it will really help you develop new ways of thinking and a broader skill set that you can act on. So let's talk briefly about the map. So compass with those directions and the map. So this is where really the rubber meets the road. You guys know this phrase, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. There you go. So if I were to walk from Google's headquarters or Google SF to here, it's just one step at a time. And that's really what skills is about. It's starting, repeating, and improving. That's it. Everybody starts at the beginning with any new skill. You need to do it to learn it, and studies have shown 100 hours of learning just to acquire a cognitive skill. Malcolm Gladwell said 10,000 hours to develop, expertise. We all go through the same impostor syndrome, I think, of, hey, I don't know what I'm doing when I'm taking a risk. The cognitive skill which says doing something well enough to get a pilot, a crude version of that thing out. And that's where the effort is high as you develop the skill. It's just incredibly high starting. And the proficiency is terrible. And once you develop this more associative skill where you're smoothing that out and you're removing errors, you start to develop patterns, pattern recognition in how you're acting. We become a little bit better at learning the skill and our proficiency goes up. And then we get into that continuously improving. And this can take weeks or months depending on the difficulty of that skill. But don't be afraid to take a risk and develop new skills because that's really where we continue to grow. So my message is around self-directed career growth in these 4 areas plus continuing to develop skills. And I encourage all of you to continue to stretch in your own career. Thank you.